Know what to do, don't you?
This one here.
Oh, okay.
Put it right there and then lean against both of them.
Okay.
And it's
This
much
makes it
more comfortable.
It is more comfortable.
Yes.
She knows what to do.
Yes. We're ready.
All right.
Okay.
All right. We're just sitting here having a little conversation with Roxanne. She's got an interesting story about her son that is currently incarcerated. Where?
He's in Faribault right now.
Faribault. You want to tell us about his experiences?
Okay. My son, I guess now that I've looked into the diagnosis of bipolar, I guess I've seen it from the time he was really young. You know, but unless you catch it when they're young, you recognize it, you understand it, and it's brought to your attention and you receive help for it. Once they turn 18, it's hopeless because no one will help you. His wife and I once drove from morning till night trying to get help for him, and they all turned us away and said he has to get it for himself. And I'm like, how does someone with a mental illness ask for help when they don't know they have a mental illness? They don't see it that way. And then the ones that love them so much see it and live with it and know he needs help, and they cry out for help, they can't get it. You know, and in these bipolar episodes, he's either way up here, you know, just life of the party and the wonderful personality, and worked really hard and always got into high positions at work because he was a good hard worker, and then the crash came. And he was way down here, and he was suicidal. Tried to commit suicide 4 times now.
How did he become involved with the criminal justice system?
Well, with a lot of mental illnesses, they get into drugs. Okay? They get into drugs because they don't understand they have a mental illness. They don't understand that severe high, and they get into that manic depression, and they want it to stop. They want it to stop. So they self-medicate. And then when he did get in trouble and get into prison, I would call the prisons and I would tell them, you know, I can tell by his voice on the phone when he's in that manic low state. Yes, I can tell right off, and I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I had called to the nursing facility, wherever they see him in there, and tried to explain to them that, you know, he had this and that he needed a medication. And she told me, oh, everyone's depressed here. This is prison. And they give everyone the same.
Is she depressed?
She should be. She's in prison. But they give them all the same medication. You know, it's just a generic, whatever the state wants to pay for. There isn't individual doses, and with these things, I know I suffer from panic attacks, and you have to try several different medications before you find the one that fits you. You know, and he's never had that opportunity. Now, this last time when he went through the boot camp program, and I really, really do thank the boot camp program, whoever made it mandatory for him to get a mental assessment, because we were going to go for our very first 4-hour evaluation with real doctors that handled this very real issue.
So does he currently have a diagnosis from a doctor?
He does.
Okay.
He does now. We got it later in life, but we have never made it to the point where we got that clinical medication, and that you know, they're going to go through. It was a 4-hour appointment to go through everything that is going on with him and to find the different medications to try, and then they would monitor these medications and he would report back until we found something, because he's not even going to know when he gets the right medication what's normal. You know, he's never lived here where you and I live. He's lived up here and down here. He's never lived here.
Yeah, I have a sister that goes through that.
Yeah,
And it lasts for weeks.
Weeks, yes.
So his experience in prison, how has that impacted his mental stability?
A lot. He was doing really well until this last time he went back to prison. This was it was a relationship between, well, they're going to edit this, right? Because I don't know if he's going to want this out, but it was between him and another guy. Because of this, he had done 8 years in prison before and came out claiming gay.
He got turned out while he was in prison. That happens.
So I'm like, okay.
Did he ever tell you how it happened?
Well, no, but he said, well, he was molested once as a child too. So and that man went to prison, and
So-called
this
family
is-
friend?
no, not a family friend. It was someone the kids knew that would give the kids liquor and cigarettes, and just a bad guy. So yeah. But then he came out and he got in this very first open gay relationship. The moment I met this man, I saw the face and the little sores, and I said, Brock, he's a meth addict. I knew it. He's a meth addict. And my son had been clean for so long and staying away from all that stuff. And I don't know, I guess he's also strong in his faith, and our faith tells us this is a sin. So he's struggling with hiding the fact, claiming to hide the fact he was gay. His faith, which tells him it's wrong. A first-time relationship, reactions from other people, and all the rest of that. Well, this young man turned out to be real trouble. Okay, and before I knew it, Barack was doing the drugs with him. And then this young man had a gun. He had been at my house. I don't know how the gun got down in the basement, but it was in the basement. I didn't know it was there. And my son came home sick that morning and just said, I'm sick, I'm tired, I just want to go to sleep. And he lay down, went to sleep, and this boy comes to my house and he just lays on the horn. And I'm like, Dylan, go away. Get out of here. I live here. This is my neighbors. So Braca got up and let him in. Braca pretty much slept all day. By evening, I hear the screaming down there. Braca's just got him in a bear hug, and this guy is screaming, and I'm going, will you stop it? It was so ridiculous. Here we didn't know he had the phone in his pocket with the police station. And then Braca just wanted him to leave. So he only had him in a bear hug and was taking him out. He told the police that Braca had a gun, and I was in the kitchen the whole time, telling him to stop, watching them too, telling Dylan to stop all the screaming, telling him to get out of the house. And so they come and they search the house. Dylan tells them where to find the gun because they went straight down to the basement and found it after they got a warrant. And then the trial starts, long trial,
What was he charged with?
Well, they were saying that this was a domestic with a gun, which it was not. It was not. Okay, then when the prosecution found out that I was there the whole time, his attorney tells me, well, they know they can't make that stick because you were there all the time. So here's what they want him to do. They want him to plead to, he had told them that a couple months ago, he knew Dylan had the gun, because a couple months ago Dylan had showed him the gun, and he told him, handed it back to him, and get rid of it. Okay? So they wanted him to admit to holding the gun at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Then we come to find out it's the same sentence. It's the same 5 years, either way.
It always is. What they do is they overcharge you, and then what happens is when you finally so-called plead it down, it's the same
thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's such trickery.
Yeah. How much more time does your son have?
He has a year now, November 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he went through boot camp. He got out on March 5th. He came home. I drove down there to get him with the pastor. He was going to church on Sunday. He was, we had tried going to the workforce center on Fairview University. I found that complicated because he, spending so much time in prison, didn't know computers, and I know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So without someone physically sitting there with us, trying to help us through that process, we were getting nowhere with the computers. So then I remembered right across the street is the Goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the Goodwill has programs there for stuff like this. And we go in and we meet Ken. What an amazing guy.
Mm.
Ken and the reentry program and the accessibility program, where they pay you $150 to go to training, to be worked on, trained on heavy factory type and construction equipment, and then you get jobs at $15 to $25 an hour, sustainable wages to keep
Sounds
these young
good.
men out of prison. It's amazing. I mean, matter of fact, I thought it was so amazing. I shared this card and this information with his probation officer because I thought there's so many other felons out there that are having such a hard time getting a job, and this is all set up for felons.
Right.
Because
Let me-
my son went to Target. Target is supposed to be felon friendly, but they wouldn't hire him.
No.
They won't hire him.
No. What are your son's chances of getting back into boot camp or the reboot program?
Well, if it's up to the PSR agents, he has no chance, because I've heard that they are starting the reboot camp program, and these PSR agents that lied about him, they say that they want their input on who should go in.
So take us through that. Now, when you say they lied on him, what was told in order to get him sent back to prison?
Okay. They came to the house. We were leaving for the training program.
Mm-hmm.
When you leave, you have to call and say you're leaving for work, or for the program. And then this time she picked up. Usually it's just a voicemail, and they said they were coming to do a UA. Please wait. So we called the accessibility program and told them, the probation officer, they're accustomed to this stuff, and they said, okay, fine, call us when you're coming after your UA. So they come to the house, they come with squads, they put us both in handcuffs, my son's sitting on the couch, they start searching the house, okay? They go straight upstairs to my granddaughter's room and my son's sitting there, stuff's hitting the floor, and he's just crying because he's like, Mom, no one should have to go through this for me. And I said, it's okay, I signed up for this. I knew that they would do this. It's okay. So he's crying, and they come down out of my granddaughter's room, and they find 3 felt bags that say Crown Royal,
Mm-hmm.
that had hair ties and makeup. They find a round cardboard cylinder that at one time may have obtained liquor as the felt bags, but it contained, it said spice rum, and it had ink pens and phone chargers.
Mm.
They find a hookah that was her ex's, and they kept calling it a bong in when they tried, or when they wrote up the complaints against him. It was a hookah. Not all the pieces were there. I told them they could test it. It had never been used for anything, and it's a perfectly legal device. You know, it was not a bong. But they insisted when they had their private hearing that it was. Okay, then they wanted to go in the garage. Well, when they came out to the house to find out, they're supposed to inspect the house. No one inspected the house. She sat at the table. She said, this line says this line says this line says this. Okay, if you agree to this sign at the bottom, there's to be no liquor, no alcohol, no weapons, you know. Do you understand all this? And never got up from the chair, never looked anywhere in the house. But then I told my youngest son about that, who does car mechanics, snowmobiles, dirt bikes. He uses the garage. He says, and he has all his tools, and I'm not even allowed out there. So he said, they're not going to go in my garage, are they? And I said, well, I tell you what, I'll rent you the garage, you know? So I told him, give me $1. He said, what, you need money? He's a little slow to catch up. He gave me 20, so I go, okay, win-win. But money legally did change hands, and I legally did rent it. But they went through the whole house to find keys. They dumped my purse out. They tried every key they could in the house, and I kept telling them, I don't have any access to that garage. They told me that was unbelievable. So my son happened to be coming by. They tell him if he lets them in the garage, they'll let my son out of the car. They'll forget everything they found in the house. And my son, wanting to help his brothers, goes, okay. And he opened the garage, and he had his snowmobile and stuff in there. The guy ripped open the seat. He had been snowmobiling with friends. He had a little tiny, enough to roll a joint, some weed. So then they said, okay, we're taking him. So that's what they charged him with. Stuff in the garage, a rented garage that wasn't attached to the house. 3 felt bags, a round cardboard can. Oh, a glass jar that they said had small leafy.
How long was he violated
Sustenance.
for that?
He lost the time that he was out and went back to complete his sentence.
So he's executing his sentence now.
Full sentence. You have to, yeah. You can go back into boot camp. You can apply once you get back there and go back through 6 months of the mental part of it was wonderful. He liked the things that he learned there, but the physical stuff at his age he can't do again. He can't do that again.
You don't know what the 2 weeks entails?
I do not know what the 2 weeks entails. We have heard
now
rumors.
They do have, now I was supposed to went through boot camp, and they do have a handicap portion of it. Because there was a guy I knew that he was on crutches, and I think he only had one leg. So they have to tailor part of the program to accommodate disabilities.
Right. Well, he's had the back problem forever,
that.
but you know the scoliosis was diagnosed younger years, and he hasn't much been to doctors. You know, I mean, like he was 8 years in prison before that. They allowed him to have a back brace.
Yeah.
But yeah, that physical stuff of we've been praying for the reboot. But then when I find out that the PSR agents, you know, they on top of the things that they found in the house, they claimed that he didn't appreciate the time out. He was using his NAA meetings to consort with other felons. He was had a picture on his phone from a friend of his who hadn't seen his daughter in a long time. Some people that we both knew, and I housed them for a short period of time. He sent a picture of his daughter that he got to see after a very long time, and to show us how beautiful she was. And they made it seem dirty and obscene. He had an underage picture on his phone. You know,
Right.
they have this creative writing process of turning everything, you know,
Make
they
it
could
look
take a
worse than what it
daily
is.
walk and turn it into, you know,
Oh yeah.
the devil.
They're experts at that. So in conclusion, what would you like to see happen now?
I want, you know, his appeal revisited. I want him home now. I feel they have, you know, he had been to church. The pastors had already made arrangements to start mentoring him one-on-one for counseling. They wouldn't let him go to the once-a-month men's group where he could be with good Christian young men who would support his walk and his needs. But they didn't feel that was necessary. They thought the NA with the other felons was more important. But then he's consorting with felons. So, yeah, I think he needs to be home. I just think this was so unjust. So unjust. He was home 20 days. I was in shock when they took him. I couldn't believe it. 20 days.
20
I was
days.
in shock. I was in a daze, and I was like, he was really here, right? You know? I really held him, didn't I? I really did. I withdrew and went to my room. I just couldn't believe what was going on. But my church pulled me out of that funk. They wouldn't let me stay in that dark place I was at, you know?
One last question though. Before all this happened with your son, did you have any idea that the criminal justice system is the way it is?
Oh, yes. I've
did?
raised 4 kids. Well, I've been through a lot with them. I've been fighting.
They've all been through the system?
Not the youngest, but as not in prison, but with court and with the police and, you know, okay. I've been in my front yard gardening, okay? And the police drive down the street one time in the summer, and in the loudspeaker on their car while I'm gardening, the police go, "We're gonna get him, we're gonna get him," humiliating me in front of my neighbors. Okay? My neighbors wrote to the Attorney General's office to tell them, this is not Germany. We don't treat people like this, you know? And they said, well, she's just got some bad boys and they're handling it in the way they feel appropriate.
All right. Hey, Stephanie.
So,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
All right. What you got to say, Stephanie?